choice. I'm very glad I didn't go for the same thing, because I don't think I would have said anything quite so eloquent. But so it was 3 things to always do with ultra high net worth or high net worth clients. I'm taking this from the position that any client who comes to you is already coming to you because you are top of your profession. In my case, it's the law, and that you are a competent person who is capable of discharging whichever the reason they come to you. I found, and it was quite easy, I thought it was going to be difficult, and I thought 3 things, and actually, and interestingly, we were talking before, and someone who actually works for us is here tonight, and he came over and he said the first thing, straight off, same as me, is it to be responsive? And I was like, my goodness, you could do this to me, this is fantastic, I don't need to speak this evening. And I would say absolutely 100%, it is about being responsive. Now, we've just heard about the 500 emails and not trying to deal with too many things at one time, but it's about prioritising that, and therefore when I say be responsive, I mean give a realistic understand something. For me in property, I'm a property lawyer, head of residential property, I should have said that to you, at Boodle, Hatfield. Quite often I'm on very tight deadlines, and so it's meeting a deadline, but it's also managing client expectations. And I sometimes feel that people, not within our firm, but I see it elsewhere, where people do not manage client expectations terribly well. So when something comes in, it's a matter of making sure the client is aware of timings and what you're capable of doing and what other people need to do to make sure something happens. And ultimately, I think that also feeds into thinking outside the box, looking at the whole picture. The sorts of things I deal with never just involve property, they involve tax, they involve a private office, they involve accountants, they involve the banks. It's a whole group of individuals that need to be working together to get to the ultimate goal. And it's managing that, and at the same time, as I say, trying to be responsive. As an example of that, and it's not necessarily the best thing, because I'm not a great advocate for permanently having your BlackBerry on and being, you know, stuck to it, because I think in fact some ways that's quite unhealthy. But I happen to have my BlackBerry on a Sunday when I was down on the South Coast last summer, and a client from a private office contacted me in a panic because the principal needed a lockout agreement on an off-market purchase of a significant property. He was flying into the country, they needed this so he could look at it and talk, because it was a private deal between friends, ostensibly, or acquaintances, shall we say. I was stuck because I'd gone down by train. This little place that I was in didn't have internet cafes and things, and you can't do documents on a BlackBerry. So, but I managed to get hold of a colleague, we managed to get hold of our tax person, not Hatfield, someone else. We gave some tax advice, we got a document done and got it to the client. Ultimately, actually, it wasn't needed. And in fact, it was about 3 weeks later when we finally entered into that, or the clients entered into that agreement. But it's about being there. It's about being able to react to things, and with, particularly with the ultra, and this was an ultra high net worth individual, they want that immediacy, and you have to be able to deal with it. So that's my first thing. Second thing, and it's quite interesting because you said, well, it wasn't you, sorry, it was one of your colleagues said to you, oh, don't say no. Actually, I think that's quite an important thing to be able to say. Very, very difficult.
She means don't say no to me.
Okay, that's good. I think part of the commerciality of this world, and what is extraordinarily important, particularly with people at the, you know, the upper echelons of high net worths, etc., they are sophisticated business people who are used to a lot of people who say yes to them. It is very difficult when, from my perspective, it may be the legality of it or the commerciality of it, to be able to say to someone, I'm terribly sorry, that is just the completely wrong way to be approaching this. You need to do this. Part of that is knowing your client, being able to work with them, but is also being, sadly, big enough and bad enough to have that conversation. Those can be really hard, tough conversations, but I think it is desperately important for an ongoing relationship that that person can trust you to know that if the commercial reality of this is that you need to say, you just simply can't do it that way. I know you're going to hate me for it for the next 10 minutes. But I've had clients who said, oh, do you know, at the time I can remember having that conversation being really, because I wanted to do it this way. oh, but you were so right, and I'm so glad, and oh yes, and yeah, and this is why we come to you. So it's being able to say no, I think, is actually a very important thing, and clients knowing that they will get the right advice from you. And thirdly, and interesting, this feeds in again to what you said, yes, I don't think you should be trying to pal up and become best friends with your ultra high net worth. They're off gallivanting around the world with whoever they want to. But I think it is critically important, and from my perspective, what I do, emotion is involved. If you are buying someone a terribly expensive flat or a fabulously expensive house or a wonderful estate in the country, it is still going to be a home for them at some point. Now, I tend to find a lot of my clients at the ultra high net worth or high net worth, a lot of them, I have a lot of male clients, and I'm allowed to say this because I'm a girl. It tends to be that it's their wives or girlfriends who are saying to them, but this is the house of my dreams, and they see it in sort of slightly different terms, but emotion is involved, and therefore I think critically, and that's more on the residential side. I do some more things which are more on the commercial side. It is less important, but I think having empathy for your client and being able to sympathise. I sometimes think I'm an agony aunt at certain points in my job during the day, depending on what I'm doing, but being able to empathise with a client, put yourselves in their position, also think about the position we quite often come up against two big egos, shall we say, on different sides of the transaction, and it's very difficult to manage. But I think if you can empathise, think about where everyone is, you don't need to be overly aggressive, but if you can put yourselves in other people's position, it can really help a deal go through. So I think, from my perspective, those are three things that I think ultimately, if you can do, keeps those clients happy, and that's what we all want, because we want a deal and a transaction to go through and to have a happy client at the end of it. So thank you.